Hello, teacher friends. Let's talk about dictionaries, translators, Google Translate. Do you use it with students? Should you use it with students? And when should you use it with students? So for me, I have a couple rules. I do not allow my IELTS students to use a translator during an IELTS speaking test. So if you're doing IELTS preparation, it's completely up to you. Of course, if a student is really getting started and they're low level, and they want to dabble a little bit with a translator, maybe for the first class or two, that's your choice as a teacher. But for me, I recognize that in on the IELTS exam, they are not going to have a translator. This does not help. Specifically with speaking, this is a no-no for me. Another rule I have, if I notice a student checking Google Translate or their dictionary, if anyone uses a dictionary now, more than once every 2 minutes, then I kind of tell them to dial it down a little bit. And the reason why is because I don't just want to teach my students words. I don't want to just teach them the language. I want to teach them the meta-linguistic form of the language. I want to give them the socio-cultural competence with the language, and I want to give them strategies to figure things out. So I want them to have understandings of prefixes and suffixes so they could pair root words with the suffix, or I want them to make educated guesses to create nouns and create verbs. Likewise, I also want them to be able to make educated guesses on the meanings of words, right? So if they are speaking and they are going for Google Translate more than once every 2 minutes, I try to get them to explain in simple terms what they are talking about. There are words that are almost impossible to explain, like unless if you have the exact word. I totally get that. But this is a tiny, tiny fraction of the English language. The vast majority of words you could explain. You could explain your way through. And the sooner that your students develop this skill, the better, right? So one of the ways that I do this actually, I do it the reverse. See, it's really easy to reach for a translator while you're speaking because you're producing. But what about when you're receiving, your receptive skills, when you're listening? Well, when I'm speaking to my students and I say a word that I don't think they would know, I test them sometimes. I will say the word and I'll say, yeah, do you know what that means, by the way? And usually they'll say no. They're they don't want to say no the first time around, but when you check with them, they will say no. And then they will go for their translator, and I say, no, don't worry about that. I will explain it to you, right? I'll give them an example in context. Yeah, and this is one of the best skills your students could develop is to accumulate vocabulary based on context, right? So give them an example in context, then tell them what the definition is, and ideally they'll know what it means, and if not, then they could go for the dictionary. Now, in the reverse, when they are speaking, they are then going to have more confidence with how to explain their way around words, or how to basically explain a word that they don't completely know, because they have already seen you do it the opposite way. A lot of English learning is about noticing, right? So if you could model this for your student, this skill of explaining the meaning of the word without saying the word explicitly, or just defining a word, giving the context of a word, then your student will be more able to do that on the opposite end. So that is basically my position on dictionaries and Translate. Do any of you use Google Translate in your classes? Do you think that it's useful? Is it helpful? Do you have any weird, wacky rules or tips like I do? If you do, please throw them down the box below. And until next time, keep smiling.